I don't know if you've heard, but we are doing a live show. Yes, TSS World Cup Live on June the 11th at the El Rey Theatre in Los Angeles on the opening night of the World Cup, the night before the USMNT kick off their World Cup campaign against Paraguay. We're absolutely buzzing for it, and I know we are plugging it a lot at the moment, but that's just because we want as many of you as possible to be in that room at the El Rey Theatre. It looks like an incredible venue. It'll be an incredible night. This will be the first live show that we've done in nearly 4 years since the last World Cup. So if ever there was a time to come along and support us and to sample what I think is a pretty special TSS community, now is the time to do that. The atmosphere will be buzzing with it being the opening night of a home World Cup for the USA. We'll have exclusive merchandise. We'll have some special guests. Ryan might even sing the TSS unofficial World Cup anthem, which he's yet to write. Yeah, he better get on that quickly. Joe might do some push-ups on stage. So as I say, it'll be an incredible night. Please visit tssworldcup.com to buy tickets, and we'll see you there.
Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our latest batch of listener questions. On this episode, we're asking if superstar players are a thing anymore. We're asking if MLS should invest more in defenders. We're asking if VR is better here in the United States, and so much more. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, it's the Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor. How are you?
Hello, the Ryan Bailey. I am well. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to answer some questions.
Yeah, you are, and questions we shall be answering. Not just you, though, Taylor. We've also got Joe Lowry here. Hello, Joe.
Man, I'm stoked we got the Taylor, not like some imitation Taylor, like imitation crab. This is the real, authentic stuff. You had to crack open the shell and pick it out yourself. That's how fresh this is. So glad we got this sorted out.
I will say, Joe, we were going to line up Taylor Rock Average. I was like, no, Taylor Rock Well. I want the Rock Well one. Thank you very much.
Is it bad that I kind of wanted Taylor Rock Average just so that the rest of us would look better at our jobs?
That's true.
You know? Or is it the multiplication effect of Taylor being so good at his job makes us all look better? Like Taylor's the one making all of us look 8% better, and if it was just Taylor Rock Average, we'd also look average.
A rising tide does lift all rocks. That's what they say.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
Don't fact check that.
I am striving for average, so you all are very kind.
Nice.
Very good. Hello, Graham Ruthven. How are you? Are you average today?
Always, at best, Ryan Bailey. Just going back to the Taylor Rockwell conversation, I missed the Tate Rockwell era on social media. Remember that era? That was good. Taylor, do you remember that era?
The what?
You used to be Tate Rockwell on social media. You changed
Tater.
it. Tater Rockwell, that was it. Tater Rockwell.
That was my worst Starbucks cup order ever, was Tater.
Hey, we have an iced latte for potato. I don't know. Hello?
It was a nice latte, Joe. A drink that I later learned was stupid to order.
Why is that?
Because a latte is steamed milk. So if you're getting an iced one, they're not steaming the milk. They're just dumping milk into your cup and then charging you for a latte. Whereas I think a flat white is actually what you want. I forget.
Oh.
But flat white's less milk. So if you want if you want the larger amount of, I never get a latte. I get a flat white if it's hot. But if it's an iced coffee, I will get a latte because I actually want the iced liquids.
And also, if you ice a flat
Saturday
white, you will be arrested.
Yeah, it's here.
I'm Team
Flat
Graham,
white.
by the way. I don't
is,
need to have my milk regulated by these people. Come on.
Wow, Joe.
Don't
Sorry,
tread
we'll
on
say
my milk
Things like that, you're going to be
much.
Secretary of Agriculture pretty soon.
Yes.
Look at Joe doing pull-ups in an airport and having people leave his milk alone. Good stuff.
Don't touch my milk.
Fight milk.
Yeah. Flat white is my order of choice, by the way, in a coffee shop.
Fight hard like a crow.
It's like a spicier latte. That's how I describe it.
Flat white. Flat white is one of the greatest innovations of the 21st century. It's good.
Is it only 21st century innovation? That's
Yeah. Australia, isn't it? It's Australia.
Well, New Zealand, in a sort of Scotland v England, who invented soccer sort of debate, New Zealand say they came up with it, but Australia is, I think, where it was popularised.
Wow. Hot coffee's trash, so I've never had that before.
Oh, that's a take.
Well, let's think of which accent it's more fun to say in flat white. Is it flit white or flat white?
Oh, the second
Which
one.
was which? Which was the Kiwi
One was me attempting New Zealand, one was attempting Australia.
Australia one was quite good, Ryan. I like that one.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Hey, Bruce, get a flat white? There you go. How's that?
That works.
Good, man.
Risky.
Saturday morning, everybody. TSSWorldCup.com is where you can head to if you'd like to come to our live show, which is a matter of days away.
Yeah.
Wow. We're going to be on stage in Hollywood. Did you ever, when you were a kid, Graham, think, one day I'm going to be on stage in Hollywood and say, look, Ma, I made it after all. I'm a podcaster.
No, I mean, podcasts weren't a thing when I was a kid, so that would have been a confusing thing to say. I've only ever been to Los Angeles once in my life, and I think I was like 12 or 13, maybe slightly older. But I was a kid when I went to Los Angeles, and I did not envisage that on 11th of June.
That's when you auditioned for the sitcom? Was it Modern Family you were going to be in? Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Very good.
I don't know enough about Modern Family to yes ands, Ryan, on that. I don't even know characters. I recognise the dad. Is his name Phil? Is the dad from Modern Family called Phil?
You're such a Manny, Graham. You really are.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
That's very good.
That's
all right.
Words.
Is he a Stella? Stella was the cute dog.
Yes.
Very good. Let's move on to the listener questions, shall we?
Luke?
Plenty here. By the way, if you'd like to submit a listener question to us, you can join our Patreon. There is a link in the show notes. We have a Discord, lots of lively chat in there. Many folks, including, I believe, Goose, who submitted this first question, submitted via our Discord. Their questions goes like this. It seems well established that the top 5% of the world's best strikers cost more money to sign than the top 5 defenders in the Premier League, etc. and so on. Why is it then that in Major League Soccer they don't invest more money in defense? It would seem an easier way to get bang for your buck. Rather than slashing cash for Son, etc. and so on, why not get a top 20% line of defenders, for the same price? Is it all down to the MLS transfer fee law? Joe, my long-held understanding of this is that the consideration is to make Major League Soccer an entertainment product, and spending money on attacking players is more likely to put butts on seats than spending money on good defenders. How far off the mark am I?
No, I think you're right on the money. And that is the effect sort of how MLS has constructed the league, which has been very intentional in that way, though potentially could be subject to change before too long. I do think that this is very real, first of all. Like what's being described here as if MLS is not spending a lot of money on defenders, that's spot on. So Jonathan Stoop did the math on social media about this recently after the latest MLSPA salary release, easy for me to say, came out. And basically the TLDR is that MLS clubs on salaries spend twice as much on forwards as defenders. I would imagine that gap gets way broader if you factor in transfer fees as well, but that was not in the math. Just in terms of pure salaries, 43.2% of salaries across MLS are spent on attackers, 21.5% are spent on defenders. So this is very real, what Goose is asking about. I will explain my thoughts on this by getting at the example in the question. Maybe that'd be a good way to go about it. If you wanted to, instead of signing Son, sign 4 defenders, and you want to use that $26 million transfer fee and Son's salary and divide it evenly across a back 4, you literally cannot do that in MLS because you don't have enough designated player spots to do it. You will have to make every single one of those players a designated player because the fee and the salary combined, even divided into 4, would make them a DP unless they're on this insanely long contract. You would have to make all those players designated players. And that gets to the heart of this issue. You literally can't do what's being described. Owners would rather lose 4-3 with Son and Messi and Royce than win ugly with 3 great center backs that people really haven't heard of, right? That is how MLS has thought about all this, and the way they've gotten there is through the designated player rule, which incentivizes teams to use their DP spots, the 3 of them or 2 of them, depending on how they want to construct their rosters, on players who, number 1, can sell tickets and be marketable, but also, number 2, can do the hardest stuff on the field, which is creating chances. And so I think the way that sporting directors think about all this is, I only have a few of these premium roster spots to use. I only have a few DP spots where I can spend whatever I want on the player, and they still hit the cap at about $800,000. That's how the DP rule works in MLS. And because attackers cost more, just like it says in the question, there is some merit to using those DP spots on attackers because you save more money, right? If you want to spend a DP spot on a high-priced attacker, you're going to save more relative to the cost than you are using a DP spot on a mid-priced center back. So that is how MLS has constructed its rules. You really can't divide up a giant transfer fee across multiple players without all those players having to be DPs, which you're literally not allowed to do, I guess, unless you're Miami or, I don't know, the Galaxy or Atlanta United of years past. But really, it is just not possible to do what is described in this question. Teams could spend more money on defenders, sure, than they are right now. But I don't know that it's really to anybody's benefit to go out and use those DP spots on those spots deeper down the field. Maybe teams will start doing that in the future. Maybe not. I'm a little skeptical.
Very good. Pretty comprehensive there. Taylor, any thoughts to add there?
Nah, Joe said it. I just think creative players sell tickets, sell merch. You want more of them, you can figure out defenders as you go.
Yeah, I mean, Joe did
The
a
LA
great job
Galaxy
there.
model, if you will.
Yeah, or the Orlando City model with Antoine Griezmann going there this summer, which is not, on the face of things, the sort of player that they need. But Antoine Griezmann is someone who will sell jerseys and raise interest, and they're hoping that's going to be a catalyst, right, for them to become a better team. I was trying to think. I mean, Joe did a great job of outlining the mechanisms there, and I don't really have anything else to add to that. But in terms of like the commercial side of things, I was trying to think of defenders who would move the needle for an MLS team in the same way that countless attackers would do. I could only come up with one, and that was Virgil van Dijk. It was the only defender that I could think of. I'm ruling out sort of like attacking fullbacks here. The only like pure centre-back defender I could come up with who would in any way have a similar impact to a top-level forward was Virgil van Dijk, and I think that just says something about how we view soccer players. And the reality for MLS is, with it still being in a growth phase as a league, that they are not just signing players for what they do on the field.
Yeah.
There are other factors.
I have had an MLS chief soccer officer, someone running a front office, suggest a defensive DP rule. I don't think this is probably going to happen. Maybe it's going to happen. I have no idea how far up the ladder this is gone. But basically, MLS recognized, or these CSOs recognize that as constructed, it does make a lot of sense to use their DP spots on attackers, for the most part anyway. And so why not add another, in their mind, why not add another designated player spot that is only allowed to be used on center backs or outside backs? How you delineate what players, what position, I have no idea. Some intern at MLS is going to have to figure that out. But this would allow them to spend money on a player that sure isn't going to move the needle, like Graham's talking about. I agree, the list is not long of defenders that are really notable to move jerseys on the entire planet. But you would maybe be able to go get, I don't know, this is way too good of an example, but a Konate or like someone really good that you can spend whatever you want. Like LAFC can go spend crazy money on a center back, or Inter Miami can go spend crazy money on a center back because they have a defensive DP. I'm not optimistic that that's going to happen. I would, if I had to guess, and I don't know this, I would think that MLS is going to go towards fewer rules, maybe not more of them, but who knows where this is all going to come down. And I think at the very least, the lack of quality defenders in MLS is an irritant to sporting directors who want to build their rosters in a more balanced way.
There we go. Doc Goose, thank you very much indeed for your question. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're talking about VAR and its implementation in MLS. We're talking about Real Madrid and whether they are a big old basket case. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our listener questions. Mark Bajaski has been in touch via our Discord and says, I know everyone's a bit tired of VAR talk, but I'm curious. Why do you think there seems to be less outrage about VAR in MLS than in the Premier League, for example? Is it a different standard for intervention? Has MLS simply implemented it better? Or is it the stakes? Obviously, people will complain when a call goes against their team, but it seems like overall, VAR just plays less of a role in the discourse of Major League Soccer from week to week. Taylor, it's a very interesting point that Mark makes there, and I'm inclined to agree. I'm wondering if culturally the American market is more suited to VAR because of American sports, because of NFL, because in NFL, they don't spend days talking about a call on the field. Well, maybe they do a little bit, but not on the level that one does for VAR in the Premier League, for example. It's just an accepted part that the technology is there and you kind of move on thereafter. Is that fair?
Yes, with certain exceptions, because you had like, I think it was a Rams game this past season where a player, it was like Rams Seahawks maybe, and a player like fumbled but didn't fumble, but by not fumbling did fumble. It was very confusing. You will get those. You don't have it nearly as much as you do when it comes to VAR talk in the Premier League and in other European leagues, and I think there's a few reasons for that. I think there are nuances to the way MLS handles it that I'm going to assume others are better equipped to speak to. For me, number one is just that there's so many more teams in Major League Soccer on a basic level. It's harder to like really spend a ton of time, like from our experience on like doing the MLS show on Tuesdays. It's hard to spend a whole segment talking about one game and like VAR in that game when you've got 900 other games to discuss. That's more of a like me thing, but I think like when it comes to the Premier League, there is maybe more time to spend on those big talking points, especially when there are title implications to those big talking points with VAR. And with that in mind, I think there's also a regular season / playoffs versus every game matters, quote unquote, idea that if you are talking about a game in like match day 33 in the Premier League and there was a blown VAR call, it could have title ramifications. It could have top 4 ramifications. It could have relegation ramifications. And so I think it feels like it has much more weight to it. With MLS, you have playoffs. And so I think ultimately it is like, yeah, that call went against them. It probably should have gone this way. But, they're still in third. They'll be in the playoffs. I think maybe if it happens in the playoffs and the decision doesn't make any sense, then maybe it gets a little bit hazier and a little bit more hotly debated. But those are like the more superficial reasons that occurred to me right away.
There you go. Graham, thoughts?
Are you sure you want my thoughts on VAR at the
Yes.
moment? I feel like I'm holding them back on a daily basis. I do agree that it seems like VAR is less dominant in the discourse in MLS than it is in other leagues, primarily the Premier League. I actually think it's like a sliding scale. So down at the bottom here, you've got the Scottish Premiership, which is like monkeys watching TVs. I'd actually prefer monkeys controlling VAR in Scotland. Then you have the Premier League, which is up here. Its implementation of it is bad, and you have all sorts of mad inconsistencies, as we've seen in like the last couple of weeks. And it feels impossible to know from one decision to the next what is going to be awarded. And then up here you have MLS, and I think the Champions League and some other European leagues, for all FIFA's fault, I always feel like their implementation during major tournaments, and I would count UEFA in this as well with the Euros, I always feel like that's quite good. There hasn't really been, well, we'll see what happens this summer, but there haven't really been any like major tournament VAR controversies. And obviously there are bad things that happen in the Champions League. I think their interpretation of the handball law is absolutely nuts in the Champions League, but it is consistent for the most part. And I kind of prefer that in a sense rather than what the Premier League or some other leagues do. So I do agree that MLS, their implementation of it seems to be a little bit better. I do wonder, and this is maybe to the point Taylor was making, like I do kind of wonder how much of it is down to the level of coverage. And obviously we're in a bubble and we see plenty of coverage of MLS, but it's not mainstream in the soccer in the way it is in the UK or in other countries. And I also think like the type of coverage there is of MLS, it's league produced stuff mainly through Apple, who are hardly going to highlight how bad VAR is in the league. They might talk about it occasionally. I know they do on 360. I watch 360 regularly, but they maybe won't go on and on about it in the way that Sky do about the Premier League. And then I think the majority of other MLS coverage I see anyway is Backheeled, Matt Doyle, The Athletic, Guardian, Ben Wright stuff, a lot of fan websites like Sounder at Heart and a few others. And I just think a lot of these guys, and Joe, you can take this as a compliment, because with Backheeled, it almost feels like MLS coverage is sort of above VAR discourse a lot of the time. I think what is missing from that media landscape, is like the TalkSport class of coverage that you get the UK. Well, exactly. That's really the machine of the VAR discourse in like the UK. Are those levels of? I saw the other night like Chris Sutton having it out with Mark Chapman on BBC 5 Live about the Scottish VAR system, and I just don't feel like I see that to the same extent in the American soccer landscape. So I also had the cultural thing, Ryan, that you had, which I was going to ask you guys' opinion on that because I'm not on the ground in the US. But I do think the type of coverage you see of MLS is maybe a factor as well.
Yeah, I think Americans are just more used to interruptions in sports and are far more willing to see change and complain about it less than Brits. Like, I'm just conditioned to accept that the sports overlords are going to do whatever they want. Like, they're going to move teams around. Not that people are going to be happy about it. They're going to change rules. They're going to do this and that. I'm already in. I don't know. It's too late for me to get out. They've got me captive, and I just sort of have to accept it. And that's not at all how Graham and Ryan look at sports, right? So we've talked about that before. So that's a huge difference. And Graham, I think you're right on the money with coverage. There's just less of it, right? And like that we and I are responsible for a not insignificant portion of MLS coverage that is produced. It's not a big percentage, but it's like you might be able to see a sliver of it on the pie chart versus you wouldn't really see us on the pie chart for the Premier League as an example. And that I could not care less about VAR. Like I do think that maybe does impact something at the end of the day. The other thing here, and I don't think this has been mentioned yet, MLS doesn't use Hawkeye technology. And the UK does. And so you end up with all these, like you get the offside lines and the planes and is the elbow past the last defender and this and that. That's real. Like that stuff exists other places. MLS doesn't have that. And maybe I'm wrong about this. I feel like that's where a huge chunk of the annoyance with how VR has been implemented is in England and in other places that have that sort of technology, because it's annoying and it feels marginal and not like in the intent of the game. MLS, because their stadiums are so different, like they literally cannot have that tech, or they haven't paid to uniform their stadiums so that they can have it. And I think that's been one of the best things that happened to MLS in a bizarre way. I believe that means there's no goal line tech and there's no like offside ridiculous. This elbow hair was a quarter of an inch past the last, whatever nonsense, right? That doesn't exist. And I think that truly is the main reason. Like you have so many fewer of those kinds of debates, and then you toss on the American attitude, which we've talked about plenty, and the coverage situation. I think you get a pretty clear picture.
So it's the simplicity then that's an asset for MLS then.
Yeah, fewer moving pieces and parts means fewer things for people to complain about. Like it's people always complain about refereeing decisions. That will happen when VR is fired off into the sun when Graham finally gets access to the control room. Like people are still going to complain about it. But I think the fewer delays you have to tell people, hey, this is what you're supposed to complain, that's better.
There you go. All right, Mark Bujalski, thank you very much indeed for your question there. We go now to Richard Rolson, who asks, or who says, how did Real Madrid take the mantle of basket case of La Liga from Barcelona? Oh, boy. Graham, is there an exact point, like we can trace where Ralph Righam's heart broke exactly on the freeze frame? Is there an exact point when Real Madrid took the mantle? Because it wasn't that long ago when Barcelona were lever-pulling maniacs, and it seems like Real Madrid certainly have taken that mantle. Was it just when all their players started hating each other? Was there some particular flashpoint?
So there has been a shift, right, the last couple of seasons, where not so long ago we were talking about how well Real Madrid were being run in the transfer market and how they were signing these young players from South America and how everything was going tickety-boo for them. The answer to Richard's question
yeah, he said
is...
tickety-boo.
Tickety-boo, that's the thing to say.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yep.
Ichi
That's the
Pichi.
thing you can say.
It's a perfectly cromulent word.
The answer is... Ichi Pichi.
Graham, stop swithering and finish your point. Okay.
The answer is Florentino Perez. That's how Real Madrid took the mantle of basket case from Barcelona. And I think we got an insight into his decision-making process, or lack thereof, last week with that unhinged and frankly offensive press conference that he gave. He is the man calling the shots at Real Madrid, and he does call the shots. He might not be recruiting and scouting youngsters in Brazil or whatever, but he is the one demanding players like Bellingham and in particular Mbappe are signed. The big transfers all come from the mind of a man who has no desire to build a functional, coherent team on the pitch. And I don't really see things getting any better for Real Madrid anytime soon, because there has been a bit of a power struggle at boardroom level within the last 18 months or 2 years. So basically, Jose Sanchez and Juni Calafat, who are the two figures who are the de facto sporting directors at Real Madrid. They don't have an official sporting director, but those are the two people, who sit on the board and have that role. There was a time not so long ago when they were actually controlling transfers, and that was during that period that I referenced where Real Madrid were doing things smartly. They were going for free transfers with the big names, and then they were signing young players from South America, and we were having discussions about how Real Madrid had changed. And Perez was happy to go along with this because the Bernabeu renovation was costing a huge amount of money, and that suited Perez in that sense. They weren't spending a huge amount of money on transfers every year. Then Mbappe happened, and he was a Perez obsession that became about more than just signing a good player, right? It became about, for Real Madrid, it was about showing to PSG and the nouveau riche class that Real Madrid could still do what they want and we could still pinch your best player. There's nothing you can do about it. And that apparently then caused a power shift back towards Perez, who had to be persuaded to appoint Xabi Alonso by Sanchez and Calafat, the two people that I mentioned who sit on the board. That went wrong quickly for one reason or another, and Perez has taken that as freedom to tighten his grip even more. And that's why we see him with the freedom to give that press conference last week, which was absolutely crazy. Fans have turned against Perez. There's been chanting in the last few games against Florentino Perez, which is notable because until recently he's been seen as the embodiment of what Real Madrid fans think their club should be, right? Which is the apex predator of world soccer. It's almost like a collector's mindset that Real Madrid have to signing the best players in the world. Like it's trading cards or something, like Pokemon. You got to catch them all. That's how Real Madrid have operated under Perez in the Galactico era, which I think there's been 3 different Galactico eras now. But the fans are growing tired, as they did after the first Galacticos era. The second and the third one sort of rolled into one another, and Perez was able to.
How many have there been now?
The gap. 3. So I think the first one was Zidane, Figo, Beckham, Ronaldo. Second one was Ronaldo, Beckham, Kaká, and now we're in the third one with Mbappe, Bellingham, Vinicius. Between 2 and 3, sort of bridged the gap between them. But people forget after the first Galacticos era, which became a circus in the same way this one is right now. Perez was forced out, and Ramon Calderon becomes the Real Madrid president, and Perez is brought back because that didn't go so well. I get this a similar sense that sentiment is starting to turn against Florentino Perez, and just looking at the person he is now, how his mind is working now, I think Real Madrid are stuck in this ditch for the time being.
So, Taylor, is it that Perez has stuck around long enough that he's not longer the hero, he's the villain? I've butchered the Batman line there.
I mean, I think he's been the villain at different points already, so maybe it's its own new trilogy that ends poorly, similar to Star Wars. I think Graham has outlined it well when it comes to the Perez side of things. I think from a team structure side of things, when you go with the Galacticos model, you tend to run into problems pretty quickly. And looking at Real Madrid's, I believe their most recent, which is a crazy thing to have to say, their most recent Champions League title when they beat Dortmund 2-0. I think also winning La Liga that season. They've got, starting in that final, Toni Kroos, Nacho, Dani Carvajal, and then Luka Modric and Lucas Vazquez come off the bench. That felt like the kind of last gasp of the old guard at Real Madrid, that you had all of these players that are kind of steeped in the Madrid traditions, find a way to win, don't really get rattled, kind of keep making something happen and end up winning silverware. And then a lot of those players leave, and very few of them are replaced. And you have the season with Ancelotti, I think that ends up with him leaving, where he at one point says he has like one fit defender because you have an injury crisis and you have some of those players not replaced. So you had Militao, Rudiger, Alaba, Mendy, and Carvajal all going down, all missing large stretches, and that makes an already imbalanced side even more imbalanced. And so then you add in the Mbappe to it, you add in Trent Alexander-Arnold, who now goes by Trent, and I feel like that is a silly thing to focus on, but it is part of my notes, that on some level, Trent Alexander-Arnold signing for Real Madrid and then suddenly being called Trent just felt very like, oh God, he's a Galactico now, fully. Like, he's changed his name, he has new branding, he wants to be a star, and I mean, that's why you joined Real Madrid in the first place, but suddenly it's just a ton of egos and personalities that don't quite blend, and it's a really similar mixture in my mind to PSG when they had Neymar, Messi, and Mbappe, right? And like, it just didn't seem like it was going to work. They didn't really have a way to make that combination work and to make it look like an effective team that could play in a unified way. And the Mbappe piece is a big part of it, that he comes in with a lot of expectation given the freedom and license he was given with PSG. And now we see what happens. PSG look like a much more streamlined, unified team, and Mbappe goes to Real Madrid, who have lost like 10 of the 25 Champions League games he's played in or something like that. Like, he's missed plenty due to injury himself, Mbappe, but he has not really elevated them, nor have any of the other individuals, especially when you're kind of trying to combine them all together. And by contrast, because lest we forget Barcelona also part of this question, like, yeah, they're pulling levers, but they're pulling levers to sign players that either get them out of hot water in the moment or give them more stability in the long term while still bringing through academy players and young players who can play a role and fill out the squad. And they look like the more, I don't know, like homegrown effective team at this point, even if they have still spent plenty of money and will continue to spend plenty of money. They're at least building a team that makes sense on paper and can play together well. Real Madrid are doing essentially the opposite in my mind.
I think genuinely a lot of this can be summed up by Barca's kids turned out to be some of the best players in the world, which both stopped them from spending on stupid stuff and made their team really good, and now they're better than Real Madrid. Like, everything that's been said so far, I think, is right on the money. That is a huge part of this, though, right? Because I think in a two-team league, this is how it works. Where two teams are at the center of the narrative all the time and only one can succeed, then the other is always going to be crumbling. Like, if Real Madrid are winning the title, it's what's wrong with Barcelona. If Barcelona are winning the title, it's what's wrong with Real Madrid. That's just how it works. That's how it works in Spain all the time. That is the whole ball game. Now, there are reasons that Real Madrid have brought this on themselves besides just, we finished a reasonably close second to Barcelona, though it's not that close right now, I suppose. Like, everything that Graham said is right on the money. Real Madrid have been combustible, and they've shot themselves in the foot here, too. But if Barcelona aren't bringing through these kids, like let's say they kept spending themselves into oblivion, or somehow their spending habits were a little bit less before, and so they still were able to go out and move in the transfer market, and you're not getting the same number of minutes from Lamine Yamal and Pedri and Fermin Lopez and all these kids, like, Real Madrid might still win the title this year. Like, this is a Real Madrid team that is going to finish second, and that ended up in the quarterfinals of the Champions League and played Bayern Munich quite tight in that series in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, it's not as if Real Madrid, if you zoom out from the duopoly at the top of the Spanish top flight, it's not as if they are a horrible team this year. They're 5th on the continent if you look at the top 5 leagues in Europe in points per match so far this year. I'm not disagreeing with anything that's been said.
Quickly, I'm trying to look for a season where their points tally would be enough to make them champions, and I've gone back through 15 seasons now and haven't found one.
I'm not disagreeing with that, nor am I trying to say that this has been a good season for Real Madrid and the only reason they've lost the title is because Barcelona have been historically amazing. That's just not true. What I am saying is there should be, like in a rational sense, there should be a lot of wiggle room between, oh, we finished second, a little bit of a down season, and, oh, we're a basket case. And the point I'm trying to make, while not disagreeing with anything that's been said, is that in a 2-team league, somebody's always the basket case. Like that's how it always feels, and Real Madrid are that right now.
But in a 2-team league, Joe, like to take what you've just said and sort of, I guess, frame it in a slightly different way. In a 2-team league, you can be second and be a basket case, which I think is true for Real Madrid at the moment. Like, I don't think anyone can look at what's happening there right now and think they're a functional team and a functional club.
Right. I think
that's serious problems.
That's true. If you zoom out and look at Real Madrid compared to other, like the rest of Europe, it's what I said. They still are 5th in points per game when you smush all the big 5 leagues together. Now, their schedule is easier than the Premier League schedule, but I just think it's an interesting way to look at these teams, right? Real Madrid are an insane basket case. Barcelona, most of the time, are an insane basket case. And yet we end up zooming in on Real Madrid and all their problems way more than we might zoom in on one of the big teams in the Premier League sort of flopping, because there's so many more narratives in England. There aren't that many narratives for us to really, truly sink our teeth into at the highest level in Spain. And so you always end up with one really like gigantic picnic basket case. I don't know what the first thing was. You always end up with something like that. I didn't like it. I'm going to stop talking now. I'm done. I'm through.
No, and Joe, what you're talking about, I don't necessarily disagree with what you're talking about, because that is the scenario in Scotland, right? Whichever team is not winning is the basket case of the club and is going through. And even if you are winning, actually, this season, you can still be a basket case of a club. And I guess the Barcelona example is something that Real Madrid and their fans should keep in mind, is as bad as things seem, and they do seem pretty bad for Real Madrid at the moment, they're probably not as bad as they are in reality, and they can still fix this because they've got hugely talented players. They're Real Madrid, they're always going to be attractive, they're rich, and with a few changes I expect they'll be back at the top before too long. The only point I'm making is as long as Perez is the one calling the shots, and honestly as long as Vinicius and Mbappe are together in the same squad, I just find it difficult to believe that there's going to be harmony between the two of them. And it's been my prediction from, I think, the moment Mbappe signed for Real Madrid. I do not envisage a scenario where the two of them, and once you add Rodrigo in as well, that those players work together. Even from a footballing point of view, I just don't see how it works. So I think Real Madrid do need to make some big changes, but it's not sweeping changes. It's like 2 or 3 players within that team.
Sell Mbappe and
sign a midfielder who can pass the ball would be my advice.
That'd be nice. Just a note on Trent, by the way, Taylor. My understanding is that, I think it was Sid Lowe said that he changed it to Trent because all the Spanish fans kept calling him just Arnold.
Yeah, they can't say it.
They can't say the name very... because in Spain they do this, because they have the 2 surnames, but they usually use the first one. So that doesn't work in that example. But yes, I think it's because of a cultural issue. So.
But also because on social media, the 5 characters of Trent works better.
Does it now?
Than Alexander Arnold. I mean, it's cheaper for fans to buy that name on the back of the shirt. So he's the real people's icon there.
There you go. That's a good point. Economies of scale there. Richard Rolston, thank you very much indeed for your question. Let's take one more quick break. When we come back, we're talking goalkeepers and much more. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our listener questions. Robert Cordova has been in touch. Hello, Robert. Total Soccer Show finds out that their national teams will use their 3 goalkeepers no matter what. Who are TSS selecting for the US, for Scotland, and for England? Now, to clarify, Taylor, we're using all 3 goalkeepers, I presume, at the World Cup here. Doesn't say they have to be in goal, necessarily. But hey, do what you want.
David James for England.
That would be fun, wouldn't it?
I suspect that the U.S. side of this is the least interesting side of it, because I'm not sure, like, as we talked about in our roster preview, there's some known names, but I don't think any of them are, like, Jorge Campos or anybody too eclectic or insane. No Fabian Barthez is in there. So what I will do is deviate from the three that I thought would be there, and I'm starting Zach Steffen in that first game against Paraguay. Let's get us off to a flying start. Maybe there's a howler in there. Maybe he lets it roll between his legs, but maybe he also gets an assist himself with some of his distribution. Then I'll go with Matt Fries versus Australia, and then I'll go with Matt Turner versus Turkey. I have all three of them in goal. I've gone very basic, but I think Turkey is going to be the team with the most chances and the team that maybe the United States will need a goalkeeper who is most capable of standing on their head. We haven't seen Matt Fries do that for the U.S. at least. We have seen Matt Turner. So I'm going experimental chaos versus Paraguay, steady versus Australia, and reliable shot stopping versus Turkey.
Okay.
Turkey.
So things getting gradually better as the group stage continues. Is that your logic?
Unless you're Graham, who thinks it is Matt Fries who should be starting every single game for every single national team. I think that's what he said in the preview.
Not in this question scenario, it's not, unfortunately.
Well, it's Chris Brady who's starting for the US and Scotland this World Cup.
Okay. Graham, would you like to run us through Scotland?
Sure. Why not? So, Scott Bain, Falkirk goalkeeper. He's starting against Haiti because, I'm really not taking anything for granted against Haiti, but you would think that he would have less to do in that game.
Bain in goal sounds terrifying.
Yeah. Well, that's why he's in the squad.
You see what he did at that stadium in Gotham?
That's what he's... Where was that filmed? But it wasn't Gillette Stadium, was it?
That was Steelers, wasn't it?
Oh, man. I thought it was going to be Gillette Stadium, and that would have worked. And I would pretend that I'd thought that before you mentioned it. Scott Bain against Haiti. Then Angus Gunn against Morocco because, this is linked to my next one. I've gone Craig Gordon against Brazil. Because Craig Gordon, at 43 years old, I don't know what magic he is conjuring up. Craig Gordon is the sort of goalkeeper who, in the past, you roll him out for one game when you have an injury to other goalkeepers, and he stands on his head, and he's still capable of outrageous saves. He made one save. We talked about it in the show against Dundee for Hearts this season, even though he wasn't their first choice goalkeeper. So I just think against Brazil, we're going to need a goalkeeper to stand on his heads, and I'd back Craig Gordon to do that over Angus Gunn, even though Angus Gunn is a better all-round goalkeeper, and he is not 43 years old and is on the books of a Premier League team. Our squad was announced yesterday, and the three goalkeepers that Scotland are taking to the World Cup, which isn't Scott Bain, we're taking Liam Kelly instead of him because he is the quintessential vibesman who brings the boombox on the plane, and we are hopefully not going to get to our third choice goalkeeper. But the three that we actually have picked have a combined 265 league minutes this season. Of course, our goalkeeper won't be busy, so I'm not worried about it at all. Just thought I'd mention that.
Taking all those Neymar shots.
So we have a Bain, we have a Commissioner Gordon. We're really missing a Bruce Wayne in goal to give us the full DC superhero Gotham vibe.
I can't come up with a Wayne. Scott Bain
Gunn, I guess, works.
Yeah.
James Gunn, isn't he the head of DC now? There you go.
Sounds about right.
Can we get Wayne Hennessy involved somehow?
Scott Bain plays for Falkirk, who are known as the Bairns, and Bairns is a slang term for a child in Scotland.
Somebody mute him.
And another slang term for a child in Scotland is a Wayne. So there we go. Yeah. You not seen Lemmy, Ryan? She's turned the Waynes against us. You not seen that meme though? That's a very popular meme in Scotland.
Ryan, who's in England's goal?
You got us here, Taylor. I was going to mention Waynes.
For England,
you seem to have it chambered.
I'm prioritising Jordan Pickford for the opening group stage game against Croatia. I believe he has experience playing this nation in a World Cup scenario.
Losing to them.
And, not triumphing over adversity, shall we say. But that's why I'm going there. I'm going to go against Ghana. I'm going to have James Trafford in goal. And for my third goalkeeper against Panama, Aaron Ramsdale is going to be my guy because he has AFC Wimbledon heritage and he deserves the shot on the highest level here. And also I think England are going to win that game 6-0 and I don't think he's going to touch the ball. So those are my three choices, and I have picked for the rest of the tournament all the way through to the final.
I don't think I knew that Aaron Ramsdale was on loan at AFC Wimbledon in the 2019 season and played 20 league games.
There you go. Now you do.
Put that in the Wimbledon quiz that Ryan will lose.
Okay.
But I think it's a... So I would assume Dean Henderson's above Ramsdale in the pecking order of the England goalkeepers.
Yeah, the three that are going to go are Pickford, Henderson and Trafford, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Ramsdale there was a time when I did rate Ramsdale quite highly, and I think that time has now passed. He seems to make a lot of mistakes, and Newcastle signed him for reasons, and I don't think he's done particularly well there. So I'd have Hendo.
Too far from London now. That's the problem. He misses Balmain.
The guy who's from Sheffield.
Yeah,
All right,
that's
cool.
right. Yeah, it's a work cultural thing. There you go. Joe, who would you have in nets for the USMNT?
So I'm bringing Turner and Freeze, and I'm starting Turner in that game against Paraguay because he's the one that I am still weirdly somehow maybe most confident in, though if I'm honest, I don't really care all that much. I want to start him, and then if things go poorly, then we're moving on anyway. So, what difference does it make? Then I'll go with Matt Freeze in game 2. And then in game 3, I have a couple of different strategies I could go with here. I've only just recently, and I'm a little behind the times on this, some hardcore USMNT fans are way ahead of me on this. I've only just recently learned about 23-year-old goalkeeper who's Laman's replacement at Antwerp in Belgium, Taishi Nozawa, who is a Japanese-American. His father is American, his mother is Japanese. Apparently he's been cooking this year. I cannot claim to have done a deep dive, but if I can use this and the sort of anti-Ryan Bailey strategy as a way to recruit somebody who's never touched the field for the U.S. men's national team, but if I can bring in a good high-level goalkeeper, I mean, replacing Lammens at Antwerp is no joke, and by all accounts, he has been quite good this year.
Wasn't he at Parma before?
No, different guy. Different
Okay.
Japanese-American. That's Zion Suzuki,
Zion
if memory
Suzuki.
serves.
Of course.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
He is
and
good.
Ryan, we've got loads of Japanese-American goalkeepers who ain't going to play for the U.S. I can just list another. I can't list anymore. But this guy probably won't play for the U.S. either. But
His middle name's Brandon.
yeah, it is, right? Makes you think. It's
right there.
If I
Let's
could
go.
bring him into the fold and have him sort of using this World Cup as a way to get him in for the next cycle, yeah, I absolutely would. If I'm not allowed to do that, though, I'm going to use Brad Stuver as my third pick. I think Brad Stuver has a legitimate case to be the American that's been snubbed the most in the last World Cup cycle by the U.S. soccer. He has consistently, every single season, been a positive shot stopper for Austin. He's in the top 3 for basically every shot-stopping metric, every goalkeeping metric that looks at the position holistically so far this year. And the dude's been really good. Like, Austin just gutted their sporting staff. They would have done it 8 games sooner if not for Brad Stuver. I mean, like, that dude had saved them and dug them out of so many pits over not just this year, but years past as well. I genuinely think he should be at the World Cup. I don't think that's going to happen because he's not done it. But I think you can make such a good argument that he should be there. And there's a world in which, I don't know, maybe the U.S. goes through qualifying and it starts a little rocky, although that's really difficult nowadays. But it starts out rocky and you're sort of looking around if you're U.S. soccer, who can we bring in? Let's go get Brad Stuver. And he comes in and wins that job and is starting for the U.S. at the World Cup. There's a world in which that happens. Unfortunately, we're not living it. But darn it, I'm going to recreate it here. Why not? So if I can't bring in my dual national, then I'm going to bring in my Austin goalkeeper.
Very good. Small quiz time for the gang. How many nations at a World Cup finals have used all 3 goalkeepers? Taylor.
Ooh.
Give me a number.
2?
England
Maybe?
did it, right? 2010. Rob Green, David James, and did they get to Joe Hart? He was in that squad. It might have been 2.
I think that was 2.
0.
9.
Wow.
That's more than I thought it'd be.
I win.
Great question.
Taylor wins with 2.
Me win.
So
Not
close.
Ryan.
Famously, in 2014, the Netherlands did it when they had Louis van Gaal did the substitution for the shootout. Was it Silerson and Tim Krul? Michel Vorm also played in that tournament for them. Portugal did it in the same tournament. Brazil did it in 22, says here. And dating right back to France in 1978. Was that when the goalkeeper got knocked out quite badly? I seem to remember that was a thing against Germany.
Brazil 22, so Alisson, Ederson, and who? Do you have it in front of you, Ryan?
I don't.
It's actually
that's
wow,
unfortunate.
Graham.
All right, there we go.
Which of our 3 respective nations goalkeepers would we most want taking a penalty at a World Cup?
Not Matt Turner.
I want Jordan Pickford because
That
I
was
want him
my
to blast
answer.
it 100 miles an hour into
Yeah.
the top corner. He's taking it like a goal kick.
And then he's celebrating with his shirt over his head. He's got a celebration ready to go. You just know it.
Brazil in 22, Graham, was Alisson, Ederson, and Weverton.
Wow, okay. There we go.
He's the evil Everton.
Sure.
I thought that was Elmer Fudd's
Using
version
Mario.
of Everton.
Or,
My bad.
Portugal in 2014 was Beto, Eduardo, and Rio Patricio. In case you're interested. Netherlands did it. Saudi Arabia did it. Tunisia did it in 2018. There's lots. There's 9. Anyway, there you go. That was fun. I didn't realise it would be that many. Thank you very much.
Is Weverton still there, right? Everton could do it again in 2026.
I think he was in there. I'm sure I saw that name in the squad that Ancelotti.
He was in the
told all
montage
Neymar fans.
of happy people celebrating, yeah. All
There
right,
you go.
let's do it again. Let's roll it back, Brazil.
Let's do it. Why not? Robert Cordova, we appreciate your question. One more for this episode from Kevin Bowen. This is a bit of a long one, but it's a very interesting one about star players. Looking at the Champions League final, I can't help but thinking these are two teams, PSG and Arsenal, that are bereft of true superstar players. For sure, both teams are stacked with high-quality players that excite deep dive fans and podcasters alike, but the ones among us who have problems keeping our Rodri straight from our Pedris might notice a lack of ride-or-die charismatic superstars leading them, as in past times. 5 or 10 years ago, the three most famous players played in Barcelona, Madrid and Paris. Nowadays, those maybe still three most popular players are in Miami, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil. The most popular player from each South America, Asia, Africa, and Europe will play in either Major League Soccer or Saudi by the end of the summer. With Lewandowski, Salah, Casemiro, he's in that list, okay, and Griezmann probably on the way. Meanwhile, the Premier League has one indisputable superstar in his prime, Erling Haaland. What are the causes and effects of this trend? Joe, this is a very interesting question. This passed me by a little bit that this has been a thing, but Kevin's quite right. The standout superstar player, I mean, maybe if you consider Real Madrid as aforementioned in this episode, you could make an argument there for having a few superstars. But as a general trend, the best teams in Europe not having a guy who's way above the rest is an interesting concept.
Yeah, it is. And there's parts of this that I think I agree with, but overall I just don't think I agree that this is the trend, I suppose. It is ultimately where I come down. I think this is all fascinating. And Saudi Arabia and MLS being willing to spend is changing the paradigm a little bit. But for the most part, I think this is a case of Messi and Ronaldo resetting the standard of what a star really is, or how this particular person perceives stardom. Before those guys showed up, and I'll admit I wasn't around really before those guys showed up, but my sense is that the whole solar system of stars was made up of Erling Haalands and Rodri's and Bukayo Saka's. Like, Messi and Ronaldo are two of the 4 greatest soccer players of all time. Like, those guys don't just fall out of the trees, and they don't exist all the time in every single year of soccer. Like, there are going to be years without players of that stature. So I don't think that the stars are really draining out of European football. I think it's the case that two of the biggest stars of my lifetime, and of all of our lifetimes, are in the twilight of their careers and doing what old players tend to do, which is leave the best clubs, go make bank somewhere else. But I think by the pre-Messi and pre-Ronaldo definition, there are tons of stars in Europe. Like, if Erling Haaland and Mbappe, and I mean, those guys are probably in their own tier, right? Then you go down into the Bellingham and the Lamine Yamal. Like, I mean, if those guys aren't stars, then there aren't any left after Messi and Ronaldo. And I that's not how I maybe would think of stars. It's totally fine if you want to think about that differently. But I just think that this is Messi and Ronaldo being so historically, transcendentally great that it's shifted how at least this person thinks about the whole thing.
Yeah, I hear that, Joe, and I accept to an extent. Like, I one of my notes says I don't know if I'm fully there on the premise of this question, because I looked at the front page of the official World Cup guide for 2026, and the 3 players on the front page of that guide are Mbappe, Haaland, and Bellingham. And I also see kids playing soccer here, and there are 4 shirts I see more than any other, and 2 of them are Haaland and Mbappe. And I bet if you go across the border to Weverton and Pickford is the other one. Right. No, I was going to say, I bet if you go across the border to England, Bellingham is also in that category. I bet it's 5. For the most part, though, I do accept we are in the middle of a generational transition. And the 2 soccer players, and this is, I think, your point, Joe, the 2 soccer players my 6-year-old daughter knows about, the only 2 soccer players that she knows about are Messi and Ronaldo, and she actually asks me who I think is better, and I say Scott McTominay, of course. And I think there are others, like Neymar. We've just seen the reaction in Brazil when Neymar's called up to the Brazil squad, despite the fact they have much better players in 2026 than Neymar. And we have come through, I think this part is true, like Messi and Ronaldo are way up here, but even below those 2 players, I think we have come through a really rich generation of superstars. So you have Messi, Ronaldo, Lewandowski, Salah, Modric. And I think they have continued to play much later than previous stars of that ilk, if you go to previous generations. So their time at the top has just been much longer. Zinedine Zidane retires at 33. Ronaldo, Brazilian Ronaldo, was essentially done at 30. Ronaldinho faded really quickly in his career, and it feels like the window for those elite players has got much larger, which is stretched into more than one generation in a sense. But I do think we're going to see, like, Lamine Yamal, for example, is going to be if he's not already there, he's going to be the next, like, household name. And I think we've seen it before, right? The early 2000s, before the sort of, I guess you had like Zidane, Ronaldo, Beckham. They were absolutely huge stars. But there was a little period at the start of the 2000s where you had Pavel Nedved winning a Ballon d'Or and Michael Owen winning a Ballon d'Or. And so we have had these generational periods before. And I just think it's a case that we're coming out of the Messi and Ronaldo era and we're going into something else, and we haven't fully made that transition yet.
To look at Kevin's premise there, though, Graham. Like, look at PSG, for example, where they had that front three with, Messi and all that, and now they don't have necessarily standout superstars. Do you take that as...
Sorry to interject.
They have a Ballon d'Or winner, no?
Yeah, that's sort of where this falls down a bit for me. Like, yes, we would all recognize that there's a status gap between Messi and Mbappe and Neymar and Ousmane Dembele, just in terms of like how he's known around the world. If Dembele is not a star, like I guess then we're just having a terminology debate, which is not interesting. I don't understand who is. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. I can't make that up, I suppose.
I think it is ultimately a terminology debate, Joe, because I would say Messi is a superstar and Dembele is a star.
Sure. Okay. Then what I'm saying though is, if we're going to use Messi as a superstar, then Messi and Ronaldo are the only superstars. Like, Ronaldo's the only other player that can be mentioned in the same breath in terms of global popularity with Messi, right? So those two guys are going to go. And Graham's totally right. I hadn't thought about that point about those players' careers being elongated and hoovering up the spotlight for longer so that the transition takes longer. I think that's super real. But you just can't assume that the next Messi is going to fall out of the tree. Like, that's just not how soccer, that's not how life is. I don't know. I'm not with it.
Joe is correct. Messi's don't fall out of trees. You can't count on that.
The big dog will catch before Messi get ground.
It's true.
I think you all have covered a lot of good ground. I have two more that I wanted to mention. One, I do think like system managers are more common, and we see more than ever managers wanting control over where players are standing, how they're training, how they're running, where they're running, how long they're on the ball, how many touches they take. And we have so much data and analytics to back that up that on some level, I think there are managers who don't really want a super duper star that attracts all the attention and is going to get the spotlight, because in some ways that can detract from the team-wide emphasis. And I think of the current champions Arsenal. I think of Manchester City under Pep. I think there's plenty of other teams, even PSG to some extent, as we've already talked about, where maybe the manager, they don't necessarily want to be the star, but they want the system or the approach to be the star and to be the way that you win, not the individual. And I think the inverse of that is also the case, that with more data, with more analytics, with more tape, we get more opposition scouting, and so you can also maybe limit the impact of superstars on an individual level or a case-by-case level, similar to what PSG were able to do to Olise in the Champions League, like in their second leg, where they basically nullified everything he could do. Like, I think in some ways there is more ability to prep for those superstars, and if you don't have superstars who have that like intangible ability the way, say, Messi did, where just out of nothing he can create. If you give him an inch, he will get a goal. Lamine Yamal is maybe the closest to that at present, and then I think there's some gap or drop off from there. But I think those two also are part of the answer for me.
Yeah, I love that point about the systems, Taylor. I think modern tactics have changed such that it is a little bit more difficult for a player to be carried by the rest of their team, like maybe some superstars of the past were. I think that's real, and I think it's also possible that it feels like there are fewer stars in Europe, or maybe they're harder to find, or maybe that does mean there are fewer stars. I don't know, because Italy and the Premier League have become balanced, I think, to a different degree, I suppose, but to degrees that it's made it really difficult to find the stars that pop up so easily in imbalanced landscapes. Like, we can find Elise as a rising star in the Bundesliga with Bayern because Germany's a one-team league. We can find Dembele going and being just one of the greatest players in the world. France is a one-team league, effectively. We can find those players in Spain and in Germany and France. Maybe it's a little harder to spot them in the rest of Europe because I think the landscape is getting more competitive. In the Premier League, in a broader sense, in Serie A, maybe this is kind of just how it is. But it's not like those teams are one or two team leagues, really. So that's another thing that I could think of if I was trying to get in the mindset of this question. And maybe that does mean that I agree with the premise to one degree or another, but I just can't shake the sense that if we're setting the bar at Messi, then we're going to fall short every time until I'm dead.
Oh, wow. That was a bleak way to end that question, Joe. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well,
Good stuff. Kevin Bowen, we appreciate you very much for your question. We appreciate everybody who submitted one. If you'd like to do so, you can go to totalsoccershow.com/questions, or you can join our Discord server. Our Patreon details are in the show notes. We appreciate each and every one of you who supports us via that medium. Hey, Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much for answering questions. We appreciate you.
You too. Mulch.
My neighbour, I need to go snap a picture
Here
of
we
it,
go.
has a license plate. MULCH space QN. Mulch Queen.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Mulch Queen.
That feels fake, but I'm really interested to see more.
Uh-huh. Same. Is it someone in our Discord?
Maybe. Anyone got a Nissan Altima with Mulch Queen as the plate? North
Is
Carolina?
it Coop?
Let us know.
Could be. Let
It
us
was
know.
actually meant to be Mulch Queen Arnold, but people weren't really using
Right.
the Arnold part,
Couldn't-
so they
yeah.
had to shorten it to Queen. It was
Carolinians just couldn't pronounce Arnold, unfortunately. Yeah, so stuck it with Mulch Queen. Graham Ruthven, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
Joe Lowry, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Ryan.
Listener, thank you the mostest to each and every one of you Mulch Queens out there. We appreciate you. We'll be back on the feed very shortly, but for now, bye.